No, you're not seeing double. TRBM Ammo Style gets a double episode release. You can save one for next Wednesday. Shoot, you don't have to listen to any of them, but if you're hearing me already, you might as well stick around. I'm going to be brief on this episode. This is an interview with a best-selling author, Martha Carr, who's currently running a Kickstarter and has done so several times for different books very successfully. She adds to the conversation that I started some months ago with Robin and Michael J. Sullivan on how to run a successful Kickstarter. And I want to bring attention to a couple of things. Martha is no nonsense. She really cuts to the chase. This episode starts out at a blazing speed and it never slows down. So go ahead and have a notepad out. Be ready to write down some things, review this episode. If you've ever thought about running a Kickstarter for your books, this is a must listen. And she makes a great point. It's one of the only places where you can get the email addresses of your readers. Now, we all know, if we've been listening to the podcast for a while, that Ammo does the same thing for you. And that is what really kicked off my interest in the first place, is I found Robin and Michael J. Sullivan talking about the power of your email list and your readers and how to keep those readers interested in your future work. And then I found Ammo, which was an advancement of that idea that didn't have some of the restrictions. But man, Kickstarter is still a network that's untapped. So if you have the ability to run a small one and kind of learn this process, I think that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of readers out there that are just waiting to catch your book. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation. Oh, one last thing. Contribute to Martha's Kickstarter. Go grab a book. I'm going to have a link in the show notes for you. So go to the show notes on this one, click on her Kickstarter, and grab copies of her book. You won't be disappointed you did. Thank you again. And now, without further ado, enjoy my interview with Martha Carr.
If you've ever watched an author read in public and felt bored, TRBM is the antidote. TRBM is for writers what time-lapse was for painters, guitar solos and spotlights were for bands, what chainsaws and ice blocks were for sculptors. What does TRBM stand for? The risky and bumbling memoirist? Tangentially reverent Bible magnate? That renowned Bangor man? You decide.
You know, you never know when you're doing the interview whether or not you were a genius or just yakking.
You sound like a genius in general because you're succeeding at Kickstarter, which I ran into Robin and Michael J. Sullivan through a mutual friend on Twitter and reached out. And just hearing what they had done using Kickstarter was one of those aha moments in my life where I thought, I'm doing everything wrong. I want to get this out to as many authors as possible because Kickstarter enables you to direct fulfill your books and reach this really big audience.
It also does one thing that nothing else does.
Yes.
It gives you the emails.
Yes, right, exactly. And you were talking about that on self-publishing formula or self-publishing.
That may be worth more than whatever you raised.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really glad that you went right there. So let's go ahead and dive into that. You are speaking to me as I am transitioning to being the host of the TRBM Ammo Edition podcast. If you've ever run into Ammo, it would be on Facebook most likely. Steve Piper is the founder of the program. I started out as just one of the people who participated in the group to sell my books directly. And so I sell all of my books through Shopify. And I advertise on Facebook. It's a really fun program, but it's the same result as Kickstarter, where you get your customers' emails. And that was Robin is very directly responsible for me jumping into Ammo. If I had not already had it in my head how important email addresses were of proven buying readers, I never would have done this program. I would have seen it and thought, I'm so tired of more programs trying to tell authors how to sell books because none of them work. Yeah. But there are a couple that do.
Also readers who have shown they like you.
Yes, right.
Not just that they're readers, but that they said, I like what you do.
Yes. Well, so and there's kind of I want to hear your thoughts on this too. There's a little bit of what feels like a rat race or a mouse wheel of you can do free promotions for your books on Amazon and move a lot of units and maybe get some reviews, or you can do the book funnel model where you do swaps, and that kind of solves it. But there's this issue if you do a free swap with somebody on book funnel that you get a lot of email addresses, but they're not necessarily buyers.
Right.
They may read your book, but they won't pay for it.
They probably won't read it.
Yes.
Yes. And so I don't do free because you get a lot of people who pick up a book because it's free. They don't like your genre. They're never going to read it, or they will, and they'll leave a 1-star review because they don't like the genre. You will not win. And also, I'm a big believer in you've got to decide why you're doing this. And if earning money is one of them, don't give away what you're doing. And there's no other industry where they say, you should give away part of what you make.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know of one, unless it's maybe the food industry. They might give away some stuff, but even they don't do it to the volume that indie writers have been known to do. And I am not a fan at all.
Your brain is exactly where mine was in terms of food would be the only other industry that somewhat mirrors it. I have a friend who is successful in visual arts out of Minneapolis. And the other day he put up a fairly long response to the call of the city of Minneapolis wanted artists to submit for a piece of art that was going to be posted in a fairly public place, but they were going to donate that work. And it was a very large piece of art. So these rare cases where people think that artists are just supposed to give our stuff away. Where do you think that idea started? Was that, is that in the social media era?
It's disrespectful.
Hugely.
First of all. But secondly, if you look at the way art departments and music departments are treated in public schools, you start to see the trend that it's seen as unnecessary or a self-indulgent. Oh, and so people don't treat it with the same respect that they would treat anything else. So you as the author need to start the ball rolling. If you have respect for yourself, and you're kind to your fans, you're interacting, but you have respect for you, your own worth, you're not going to have a problem, because the people who don't have respect for you are going to go elsewhere because you're not feeding them what they want. So it starts with you, and it really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. You build you. That's
so brilliant. I just got an email from my alma mater. I got a master's in fiction writing out of Eastern Washington University. It's the second time since I've graduated that they have sent something out and said they're looking to chop departments right now, and we're on the top of the list. So we're asking every graduate, what was the worth of the degree to you? What was the value in it? Why should we still exist? And so we have to send in essays, and I probably will send in a clip of this podcast because the value is really obvious. Not everybody is going to use their degree. Almost nobody uses their actual degree in the field they thought they would. But the things that I learned in my master's are really valuable. And the arts degrees, I think, made me a more capable a lot of things. So,
also back during the Depression, the federal government saw fit to pay photographers and writers to travel around during the Depression and record it. And some of the photographs and books that we adore came from that era when they were paid by the federal government. And they're the foundation of some of the things we call classics. So when you may take it for granted, but you also are relying on it.
You are setting a pace right now that is really enjoyable to me. I did not know that about the government paying artists. Obviously, I do know about the period in terms of art.
Mice and Men. Oh, shoot. What's the one about?
Grapes of Wrath is the one I'm thinking of. It's got to be there, too. Yeah.
Yeah, he was hired to go around and record about the Dust Bowl families, and he quit so he could write Grapes of Wrath.
Wow. And that's so writerly, by the way. I mean, I hate to say that, but that does fall into the stereotype of a writer. It's like you get hired to do something and then realize, no, I think it'd be better if I wrote this as a novel.
Under my name, and I keep it. Yes. And also those beautiful black and white photographs that are so moving of the Dust Bowl were paid. Those were photographers paid by the federal government. They wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have that emotional connection to it if it weren't for that fact. So a lot of people, and also, by the way, I get consistently every week at least one or two, if not more, emails from people who say, I'm taking fewer drugs. My PTSD is easier to manage. I don't feel so alone because you made me laugh.
Oh, wow.
And you're right. And so I always say I write recess because I write urban fantasy action adventure. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. But at the same time, what will consistently sell books is character development. And that's why people come back, because they want to know how their friends are doing. And if you, in my particular thing is, I'm trying to say we're all okay. We'll be there for each other through an action adventure and magic. And so that matters, that people who feel alone or don't know how to deal with pain or trauma for a little while, they just get to laugh and know everything will be okay. That matters.
That's a really interesting perspective. I want to linger here. It's not necessarily the brunt of what I want to discuss, but I think that there's something really valuable
like
in this.
Kickstarter, you mean?
Well, I do want to talk about Kickstarter. I love what
Well,
you're
at
doing.
least at some point.
Yes, exactly. But I want to stop and talk a little bit about this idea of entertainment as a form of therapy, because what I run into a lot in the writing community, and I think I see it more frequently from folks who have not made that push into publishing and treating this like a profession, but the idea of like, only writing for entertainment or only reading for entertainment and not thinking about the multiple layers in which any book is coming across. I think about C.S. Lewis being a kind of fantasy, and he certainly had an agenda. J.R.R. Tolkien has an agenda. I think that when I talk to Michael J. Sullivan, he has an agenda, maybe not quite as religious as the other two I mentioned, but I can't think of anybody who doesn't have a message that they want to convey. But entertainment, if you do it well, is what everybody feels and senses. You're getting these emails that people are saying, you've actually helped me. So I need to hear from you a little bit about, do you view yourself as having a little bit of agenda is a strong word. So if you react poorly to that, just a mission or a purpose. Yeah.
Right. I don't think I do. I try. So I think that writers succeed best when they write what they want to see. And because we're all basically average humans in different niches. So I write what moves me. And it just happens to connect with people. By the way, you can be a super successful author and be reaching less than 1% of the readership out there, which is kind of good news because, there's always new eyeballs. Yes. But so I personally can't set out in order to move somebody. That's just going to happen organically. And that's the way it does happen. And really what I'm setting out to do is why I say I write recess is I hope you have a good time. And I guess, too, I do have the belief that if you take away all the bullshit, we're all more alike than we can see, especially at the moment. Yes. And I guess that's probably in there in the way I set up the characters and the growth they're going to have is to learn how to work together. I think I do that pretty consistently. But I'm also, if you can't tell, I swear a bit. And I have a snarky sense of humor, and I was raised on television, so I have a lot of deep cultural references that aren't very sophisticated that I like to throw in. So people seem to like it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite authors, I mention him somewhat frequently on the podcast, is David Foster Wallace. I love that he's all over the place. Like he'll go very cerebral, he'll go really lowbrow, and everything in between. I enjoy when you can traverse a lot of different languages and dialects in the way that you bring a world to life. One other thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to jump into the real nitty gritty of the Kickstarter, getting the emails, the financial benefits of all of that, is you talked about urban fantasy. You described it in a way when you were talking with James that I had never heard it described before, which was like modern day with a little bit of magic splashed into it.
Magic in a realistic setting.
Magic in a realistic setting. Thank you. That's exactly right. So I've been running my ad for my books, and it's certainly not urban fantasy, but I call it detective fiction with a splash of magic. So it's kind of the same idea.
That's urban fantasy. That's
okay.
Urban
See,
fantasy.
I would never have called it that, but when you said that, I thought that sounds kind of like me, except it's so noir, so detective that I keep holding back. I think I'm going to change my ads to include urban fantasy readers because I think I'm missing out people.
Yes, I would agree. Because once you throw magic in, you're in urban fantasy land. And there's plenty of people who are doing detective-like stories in urban fantasy where the detective's a wizard or, the detective's, So that's urban fantasy.
Okay, so and I want to ask, who are the urban fantasy authors that you started reading? When did you pick up on it as a genre, and where did the inspiration come from for you to write it?
Well, I went to, so I was writing thrillers and no one cared. I mean, the
Oh,
people who found it loved it, but
sure.
I couldn't get enough people even notice I was odd. And
Wow.
I went to a meetup where back in 2017, I think,
Hmm.
Michael Anderle was speaking. Nobody ever heard of him.
Yeah.
And he had said that he was making six figures in 3 months. And I thought, that's not possible. But I'm going to go and see if he has a marketing tip or two. And there were about 100 authors in the room. And halfway through, I realized he had accidentally come across something that none of the rest of us were paying attention to. And he was right. And at the end, he said something he won't say anymore. He said, I'll stay as long as anyone has a question. And
Wow.
everybody else was filing out past me saying, he's lying. That's not
Wow.
true. It can't be
Hmm.
done.
Hmm.
And there was me and two other old guys up there. And I was the only one who asked for his number. And he's the one who then called me later and said, would you be interested in urban fantasy? And I thought, why not? And frankly, if I had really looked at my life, I was a magician at my brother's 7-year-old birthday party, and I was deeply into Star Trek. I mean, it was kind of there,
Yeah.
but I wasn't seeing it. And it took off like a rocket from the very beginning. It was where I
Hmm.
belonged all along.
That is so much fun
However,
to hear.
I should say, much like you, the urban fantasy stories I do consistently have a thriller theme to them. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just, what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? When I read Raymond Chandler, I could repeat that voice in my head. I was able to mimic the kind of tone that he had, and I already enjoy being a little bit verbose. So describing the setting and the scenery and making it a little pulpy is fun for me. And that kind of grew into, okay, I get how to structure a story around that voice, but I take myself too seriously, and so I throw that magic in there, and suddenly I'm at play. And when I'm at play, there's
Yeah.
laughs on the page, and I think that translates. So readers seem to really appreciate that, unless they don't. And I'm not going to go into it, but it's funny when I do get a bad review, people will say, your character is eating something new in every paragraph. That's humanly impossible. And I'm like, stick around. It's there for a reason. So,
Well,
um,
I find it's very useful in urban fantasy in the first couple of paragraphs to set up what
yeah,
kind of creature is this, so that everybody's on the same page. I don't
yeah.
really agree with the let's surprise the reader. I mean, you
Okay.
could
Yeah.
do surprise the reader, but not with names, what the person is, where they are, the
Yeah.
basics. You got to set the stage. It'd be
Right.
like having a movie where it stayed blank for a while and all you heard was the dialogue, and we'd all be sitting there saying, what is happening?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The case with my book is it's a structure much like Groundhog Day, or at least the first book in the series is much like Groundhog Day. But you have,
Mhm.
and it's the same thing you ran into when Groundhog Day first came out, is that up until Bill Murray dies the first time, you don't have any idea that you're dealing with something a little bit off the beaten path. It just kind of feels like a
Right.
snarky guy reporting on a particular day, and then here we go, start the day over again. And so I
Right.
was talking with my literary agent at the time, and she said, "Have you ever thought about this before?" And so that was adding in the partner, the main character's partner. His name is Lyle. He just eats constantly, and that was her idea, to basically say, like, tip them off that something's not quite as it seems,
Yeah.
so that by that first death, they're like, "Oh, okay, I'm getting it now. I'm feeling more accustomed to where it wasn't such a surprise." Enough about me. I want to talk about you and your Kickstarters, because you're the second person I've had on who's done it. And if we can help other writers to understand the power of direct fulfillment, getting those email addresses, I'll be a happier person in
Opening their
general.
own store.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and by the way, after the Kickstarter's completed, my own store will open up. So, I'm going to keep building that as well. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that Amazon, it isn't the end all be all.
Not at all. Yeah. In fact, I think it's a good place for authors to start to build a presence. There are some things that you can do. Still, the
Yes.
majority of readers are going to go there to look at reviews
For
and things of
now.
that nature. So exactly, for now, I still try to tell people, even when they buy directly from me, to put a note in the book if I send out a physical copy, or something in the subject matter of the ebook that says, "I would love a review on Amazon," as it helps me find new readers. So those kind of things can be helpful. But Let's start at the beginning. How did you find Kickstarter as a solution to your problem?
So I also have a learning disability. I can't see
Okay.
numbers. It's called
Yes.
dyscalculia.
Tell me
So
more about
doing
that. I heard
ads,
you talk about that. Yeah.
yeah. So back in the day when we still had checkbooks, I always had an accidental savings account in there because I couldn't see that I'd written it down. So I'd write it twice, deduct it
Oh.
twice. And so I had a weird savings account going on. And I can't consistently see numbers. It's exactly like dyslexia, but it's numbers. So
Okay.
doing ads on Amazon, it's always been kind of hard for me to track
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons I was with Michael, because he's so good at it. We
Yeah.
made a good pair. Kickstarter, it's not as necessary. And so I knew right away that it was a more level playing field for me and I could really come on strong.
Okay.
So
Talk
that
to
drew
me
me.
a little bit about and dyslexia is a little bit different for different people who have it. So I've gotten some kind of angry notes before when I've characterized things a little too narrowly. But my understanding for the most part of dyslexia is that like words kind of will float around or move, or it's hard to focus on them and they kind of transpose. And so it's really a
Right. Same
difficulty to
with
focus.
calculus.
Okay, so you can
And also
see
if
like
you
the
give
numbers, but
me,
they kind of don't
yeah,
arrange
and they aren't
themselves.
really consistent.
Okay.
Yes. And also if you try to talk to me about something in terms of numbers, not
Mhm.
objects, I really can't follow you.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah. And so I got to let it go and look for where I do belong.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I think so often when I'm having conversations with people who have had the kind of success that you've had, somewhere in there, it seems like a disability oftentimes is part of that. It's hard not to notice the consistency of that theme. It's like you run into a wall where most people don't see a wall. And so you're forced to find a way to develop a strength outside of the common
Well, you
boundary
also
line.
don't have the fear of living outside of the box because you do anyway.
Because you've already been there.
No, you live there.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and being there and living there are two very different things. And if you live there,
Yeah.
then the idea of doing something new is just doing something new. You know that I know there'll be a learning curve. I know there'll be missteps, but I'm not concerned about missteps because, I've made them before and it's just part of the being. And that's actually part of success. There will be missteps. There will be money spent that it's like, ooh, that was bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the faster you can, and if you cannot blame yourself, if you can see it just as something that needs a solution, and perhaps the solution is just let it go, then you're faster to move on and not take it personally, and you're already back on track. And you also will have learned something, no matter what it was you did. You will have learned something you're going to take with you. It's when you it's when you make it about ego. What did I do? Why was I wrong? That you're going to slow yourself down and wear away. And it's not the case. Even if you did really something boneheaded, who cares? I mean, so how did that happen? Did I not check things enough? Am I going too fast? Do I need somebody to double check it? When you can take ego out of it and making it about you and just say, how do I fix it? And keep, the solution might just be the beginning of one. It doesn't have to be the final solution. It's just, what do I need to do first in order to fix this?
Those are good words, no matter who you are listening right now. I know I struggle with that personally. I think, especially when you talked about the ego, I tend to be actually fairly friendly towards people who talk about having big egos, because I know I have a really big ego, and I don't see all of that as being an issue. But when you mentioned,
I don't actually mean big ego. I don't actually mean big ego. I mean ego. So when I say, when you see a writer and they just feel crushed because they had a release and it went, and they're saying, I try and it must be me. That's ego. Ego is the thing that tells you it's you. Yeah. And I'm saying, take that out of there. It's not you. You made a miscalculation somewhere. Look for the miscalculation, ask for help, but don't make it about an up or down on whether or not you're worthwhile.
Yeah. What if the mistake feels big enough that you feel trapped? Like what way would you pivot if you felt trapped because you made a mistake, and you can admit you made a boneheaded mistake, but you feel trapped? What would you do?
And I have made boneheaded mistakes, some grand ones.
Me too.
But I've been doing this for 30 some years. When it's a book, the basic elements: blurb, cover, story. And so if I would start with story and look for fans or just people online who are not in writers groups. You want regular humans who, and not your friends or family, and who will read it for you and give you their opinion. And you want to look for the commonalities. I mean, you kind of let go of the way to the left or way to the right, and what common themes. And then if they're saying the story doesn't hold together, or it took too long for the characters to really be introduced, then you might look for a line editor, which is somebody who will help you with the story and see if you can strengthen it. I mean, I have somebody who reads my stuff, and it still happens where they'll say, you need to reverse this. Yeah. So I don't try to do it all alone. Then the next thing is the cover. And then I would go online and look at books that are doing well and see, is it one character or two? Are they facing me? What colors are they using? And you start to see there are tropes that are necessary, and am I using them? Or, did I decide to go off and do my own thing? Because the reason why those tropes are important is because when somebody is sliding through Amazon with their finger on their phone, whether they know it or not, their eye is picking up on it's purple, there's a fireball, and so their brain is saying, you like that. When we decide to be artistes, we're trying to sell a book, not a cover, and come up with something different. That's cool, but that means that the person may slide right past you because their brain is saying, I don't know what that is. And so you either have to have done something so wonderful that they stop anyway, or they're sliding by you. And then the next thing is the blurb. And again, I would look for people to tell you why. And you don't have to have a fan base in order to find readers. They are out there. Right. They're very nice people. So like in urban fantasy, fans of urban fantasy is a big fan group on Facebook. And you can go in there and just ask, and you just need 2 or 3 people and see. And so it's going to be one of those 3 things to begin with. If you fix those, chances are your sales will pick up. And then the next thing is ads. And you look at the numbers. I mean, is anybody clicking on it? And it's all going to be very pragmatic. Yeah. And can you be humble enough to take advice and go with it? Can you say yes? So also, do you have to also put in what you thought you were going to do, so they know you're not an idiot? Or can you just let that go, take the advice, and go make some changes and pick yourself up and try again? And also, if you brought the book out and it is crashed and burned, can you give away 3 chapters? And I mean, let's say they say the story is great. I mean, I don't know why. This is great. Okay, well then go and give away the first 3 chapters or 4 chapters, and just be humble enough to start talking to people and say, I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have this great story. And here's 4 chapters. And, it's a book funnel, and they'll go and get it. And then the last thing I'd say too is keep your expectations super low. So Shane Silvers, who a lot of people in urban fantasy land know, he worked at a bank, I think as a bank manager, might have been assistant manager. And his goal, so by the way, he didn't do well at first at all. And he went back and decided to start learning the business side of the craft. And then his goal was to make as much as he was making as a bank manager, which was kind of a low bar. Yeah. And once he could do that, then he could quit. So his expectations, he kept them low. What happens when you keep them low is you can feel the success. So if I tell myself on this Kickstarter, I want to make $2,000. I mean, I'm going to set the thing at 500, but I hope I get to 2,000. There's a good chance you will. And then, you can feel good about it. So make reasonable expectations, knowing you'll build on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy hearing you say this. I come from, or I shouldn't say I come from, but I've been spending a lot of time in a different school of thought. I mentioned him on the podcast several different times. His name is Grant Cardone. A lot of people think that he's a jackass, and probably rightfully so. But he talks about, he wrote a book called 10X, and the idea of whatever your goal is, multiply it by 10, and then you have a big enough goal you can actually be interested in trying to do something. And it was an idea that really captivated me and continues to captivate me, but I've had to alter it a bit for myself, because I went into my first Kickstarter with that mindset of, if I set the bar too low, then I won't try as hard as I need to try to make a really big impact. And I failed to collect it. I was about halfway through to my campaign goal. And I just realized, like, I looked at my wife one night and I said, I don't have a soul left. I can't go out and ask anybody else to pick up a copy of this book. I hate this. And I'm from a sales background. So
I'll give you a middle ground that instead.
Yeah.
So there, and by the way, with books, so sometimes people have to set the goal high, because if they don't get it, they can't make the product.
That's true. That's a good point.
That's
really
reasonable. But with books, that ain't the case. And there's no prize for setting it high. No one will care. No one will notice. But if you set it low and you hit it in 10 minutes, you get to come up with your own sticker and stick it on there that says funded in 10 minutes or whatever it is, funded in a day.
Let's put a pin in that, because I want to come back to it. I want to come back to that specific thing. Go ahead and keep going, but I just want to come back to that.
Okay. So the other part is, so you can also, so I can tell myself my goal is $2 million, not on this Kickstarter, but that's what I'm working toward. And then I leave it open. I don't know how long it'll take, but that's what I'm consistently working toward. But my day-to-day goals are much smaller. And, I'm going to try my best to approach everything with humility and understand this is a learning process forever. But my goal is eventually 2 million. So, we'll see. But I can do it with open hands. I mean, if I only get to 1 million, all right.
Yeah. Only. Yeah. There's so many people listening that are like, 1 million? What are you talking about? That's impossible. But Patty Finn, who's doing very well on Kickstarter, his first one a little under 2 years ago was $2,000, and his last one, I think, was $200,000. Yeah.
And really, if you're making enough so that your family can go on vacation, or you have now managed to make enough to pay one of your kids to go to college and you have a day job, you're successful. You got to redefine what success means, but also I would say short-term, mid-term, long-term goal, and let go of the expectation of when and how, because it's not going to look like you think it is. You're going to get there somewhere, but it probably won't be the way you thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that part of the small caveat, I do like to leave this door open for the weirdos and the freaks like myself who are willing to do some really uncharacteristic things to try to accelerate their process. There are some folks out there, if you hear the call to sacrifice everything you have and try to make it work, I just want to leave that door open for people to like go all in.
They're going to do it anyway.
I think
they're
so.
going to do it anyway.
I think that's true. I think that's true. It's impossible,
a lot of stress on themselves.
Yes, exactly. And some people can carry it. And I don't know why that is. Some people can carry it. But I also know that those people who can carry that are the kind of people who are still looking for someone to give them permission. I think all of us want permission at some point to just be like, I can do this. I'm allowed to do this. Not like I will succeed, but I'm allowed to.
Absolutely. But you can do it with being able to pay the bills so you can sleep at night. You can do both. Yeah. You don't have to dump that stress. It'll be stressful enough.
Yeah.
I mean, when you start your Kickstarter, those first couple of days, the adrenaline will be running high all by itself.
Yeah.
You don't need to add anything else.
We have teased this for quite a while. So I'm going to try to be as good as I can about not talking numbers, since that's not what you want to do. And I respect that. How do you set this? I want to come back to this question that you mentioned. How do you set up a goal that you can actually achieve in the first 10 minutes? Or what I've been reading online is that you need to be fully funded within 48 hours, or really all kinds of forces start working against you to have a successful Kickstarter. So what I mean, let me give you my response to that, and then hear from you. But my response when they say that is, I thought the Kickstarter was the pre-sale in the first place. So how am I supposed to pre-sale a pre-sale on Kickstarter? Like, how do I get people interested before I open the door?
Yeah, that's a great. Okay, so I'll just use myself as a case model. First of all, I wrote the book first. I think that is key, because then when I looked for influencers on Instagram and TikTok and somewhere else that I can't remember, I had a book. I had a sample that I could send them that they could hold up. If you don't do this, you don't have anything for them to hold. And that was key. Secondly, and then also I took the stress off myself because the book's been edited as well. So I know it's good. I know it's done. And then I and I got a few reviews from book bloggers. So I had that as well. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, I set up so that I had a page up there. I started back in November for our May 1st release of a Kickstarter. And I started in January. I started advertising for it. And so that people would come and sign up to get a notice when it came out. So by the time the book was out on Kickstarter, I had over 400 people who wanted a notice. And, and they don't react day one. So in advertising, they say you have to hear something 3 times before you're going to pull the trigger. And so I'm working on the 3 times. And also, I came from traditional land where they only gave you 3 months from the release of the book to have success, or they pull it. Absolutely. 3 months, that is nothing. Right. So all the advertising you did was prior to the book's release. If you didn't have a momentum going, you were screwed. Well, Kickstarter's the same way. So you have to be pushing it as hard as you know how before the date it's released. And what you're doing, instead of looking at it as I'm going to push it as soon as it comes out, that's when you're coming back to all those people and saying, here I am, and here's why you want it. And look, there's the shiny page. Come see the whole thing. And only a 10% or so, or 20% if you're doing really well, of the people who signed up are probably going to actually jump. There'll be other people too who never heard about it and they'll jump in. But I mean, so you want to start with the biggest number possible because you're going to get only a chunk. Now, when you come back to Kickstarter the second time, a lot of the people who didn't the first time might. This is another thing I would suggest. Not everybody necessarily agrees with me. But if you're new and you're doing a trilogy or 5 books or 6 books, do one at a time. Do not give away everything at once because you're trying to build an audience. And if you give away everything, you don't have a chance to build. So unlike Amazon, in Amazon land, the most readers you'll ever get are on book 1. Yes. In Kickstarter land, that is not true. It's reversed. So you want to bring out that first book, let it be whatever it's going to be, knowing you just got started, you're new on the block, everybody wants to get to know you. And there's going to be people who know they can jump in at book 2 or 3 because you're going to have your back order on there as add-ons.
Perfect.
So so they'll wait around, see what everybody thinks of book 1. Oh, hey, somebody liked it. Well, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get 1 and 2 on the second Kickstarter. So that gives you a chance to gradually build. And so break it down and give yourself like that long view and keep it simple. I see people with all these gewgaws. I have some. It's not that you don't do any. It's just focus on the book. And let that be your start. And you can add on the whole world later, but keep it simple for your own sanity. And make sure, get samples if you can afford it, 1 or 2, because you're going to need to give them to people so they'll hold it up for you. And you can find, the best review I got, the gentleman wanted $20. I was sure. And it can run as high as 1,000 or more. But there's a whole range there. And people who have a following of you're looking for the people who have followers under 10,000, under 5,000. Those people who are following them really like them. And you're going to get pick up a few. Well, all the people you've picked up are brand new. They don't know who you are. That's perfect. Yeah. And make sure the book is good. Get some people to read it. Polish that. And so that you make a great first impression. You're on a blind date, basically.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit more about this, because this is something interesting that I haven't heard a ton of in terms of building the audience before launching the campaign or in the midst of launching the campaign, or maybe on the second book. Is you're talking about finding on the smaller side influencers. How do you find those people? That's a genuine question. I've always wondered. Okay.
You Google yourself to death. Okay. You can find them. And then you go and you go look at their posts to see if they're consistent with, not just your genre, but your flavor. And then you reach out to them and say, hey, would you ever be interested in reviewing or promoting an indie book? And, some will ignore you. So, and I was looking for 5 or 6. That was my goal.
Yeah.
And I think I found 7 or 8 by the time I was done. And then you just, give it a whirl and crush. So, and I come from Tradland, by the way, originally. So I was used to, you go hunt for reviews. And usually in Indie Land, we don't do reviews from the other side of things. We rely on fan reviews.
Yes.
And so this was kind of fun to take a step back and mix it in, where you go and get a review from a blogger and hold your breath and hope they like it.
Yeah.
And then when they do, before the book's even on Kickstarter, that's kind of nice. So you'll notice on my Kickstarter page toward the bottom is that review. One of them. I mean, I got a few. Another one, she was delightful, but she had a lot of spoilers in it. So there was only but so much of that review I could use.
Yeah.
Because she gave way too much. I'm glad she got that enthusiastic, but come on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you a little bit of what I've done and tell me if I'm on the right track. The examples help me, and I think they'll help people listening. I went out when I started thinking about TikTok as being a potential force for good, and knowing that TikTok is uniquely skilled at moving print units. I reached out to book talkers that reviewed books and asked a bunch of them if they would consider reviewing my book if I sent them a free copy. I got one response back. She was enthusiastic. She was positive. It wasn't a super long review, but it was positive. And then I kind of backed away because I thought maybe I'm doing this wrong, or maybe this is presumptuous. I guess critique that and tell me how could I do it better next time?
Well, so why would it be presumptuous? This is what they do. You're another author. It's just basically what they do. You take a note, great, move on. And I would call book talkers influencers. Those are influencers.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And so why would anybody else be allowed to have a review and not you? Again, that's ego. And, not ego in the definition you were using, but the emotional side of us that then makes it about us. It's not about you.
Yeah.
So really, when someone says a clear no, they're doing you a favor because you're not going to waste your time. You're ready to move on. And you just make a spreadsheet with all the names and numbers and a note about what happened. And you just keep going and you keep the number low. Maybe you'll only find 3. Great. That's 3 more than you had. And you on book 2, when it comes out, you'll use those 3 and look for some more. And you'll just keep going. So you have as much right as anybody else to go and ask for, become bold. I had a friend who was doing a Kickstarter and she wanted to ask a mutual author we know who's doing extremely well if he would do a shout out, but she was reluctant to. And I said, how is it any different if you ask him and say no? How is that any different from you and I right now? Because the only difference is you know he won't. I think you can handle it if he turns you down, but he might say yes. And he did say yes, and it actually boosted her Kickstarter at the very end. So really, again, I can't emphasize it enough. Take the whole do they like me or not out of it, and just ask. I asked people who I thought might say no, and they didn't. They said yes. So and that's and some people ignored me. By the way, not everybody said yes. Yeah, I'm talking about mutual author friends who what do you do? Shut up. Some ones who surprised me said yes. Others surprised me by totally ignoring me. Yeah. And that's cool. I'd rather actually have a no, but I'm good with either one. And you just keep going because it's cool. I can handle either one. This is an art and a business, but it's not a blind date with that. The blind date is with all of these readers. Right. But it's not with everything behind the scenes. That is not a blind date at all.
Yeah, there's this part of me that's hearing what you're talking about, and I think I'm already a long ways down the road of shedding that fear of asking. In fact, I do know that in some places I have a bad reputation because I'm not afraid to ask. And I've kind of accepted that as the cost of doing business a little bit. But there are those moments. There's a lady specifically who's actually not even in my field. She's a professor at MIT and is really deeply studying from an academic perspective the idea of what's like The Secret? What is that called again? I always lose manifestation. So she's actually doing
The Secret.
It's like that. Yeah, it's like The Secret Manifestation,
Okay.
but the science behind it. So there's actually a science of why when people really glam onto manifestation, it tends to work. It's not because you believe that you're going to succeed. It's because when you believe a certain thing, you behave a certain way. And
Oh,
so
absolutely.
she's showing the science behind that and saying like, do both things at once, work really hard, but actually be clear about where you want to go and believe you're going to make it there. And you'll start
But
doing the necessary
yes,
things to bridge that gap.
absolutely. But also in The Secret, they pointed out, and in Manifestation, they point out, which I think is also, they also say, you have a goal, but you have no expectation about how and when.
Yeah.
So that because if you believe it has to look like this, you're going to turn down opportunities because it
Beautiful.
doesn't
Yep.
look like it. And those opportunities may have been the very things that were about to take you where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
So take off that it needs to look like this. I mean, you know, I'm sure everybody's rolling their eyes, but when I make 2 million, we'll see. And
Yeah, I'm not rolling my eyes at all.
but I have a goal, but it could end up looking, I mean, you know, who knows? I'm open to it. And because I'm open to it, if somebody gives me an opportunity, I'm going to say, sure, why not? Russell Nolte, who's very big in Kickstarter land, this is his philosophy too, is he gets asked to do things like brand coffee with one of his books. And he's like, sure. And then it leads somewhere else he didn't see coming because of the exposure he had with his book name on a bag of coffee. Mm-hmm. And, you know, other people might have said, no, I mean, I don't have time for that. It's not a book. Well, you know, I go through the doors that open. If it's an open door, then I figure that's where I'm meant to be. And if I can do it, I am. Now, there are times when you think, I do not want that at all. Okay, listen to that. That is not your path. Yes. But shy of a strong nope, I'm going to try and, you know, see what happens. You never know. And it's fun. I mean, wouldn't you like to have your name on a bag of coffee?
Yes.
Seems like fun.
Right. I love it. Yeah. So
let me quickly mention too, for anybody, the name of the Kickstarter is Amon. It's EAMON, but it's a Gaelic word for a wealthy protector, and it's Amon with a lovely blue dragon on the cover.
Okay, super weird because my son's name is Edmund, and that's the same root word because wealthy protector is the definition of his name. Yeah, small world. That's great.
And the plot and the elevator line is a girl gamer in a taco truck who finds dragons and fights interdimensional demons in Austin, Texas.
Amazing. It sounds really fun. That is great. So wrapping back around, I want to ask that particular podcast host / professor to be a guest on my podcast. I want her to talk in depth about manifestation to my audience. But there continues to be a part of me. I've had positive interactions with her on Twitter. I've had positive interactions with her on Instagram. And I want to continue to show her that I'm a respectful, engaged person before I make that request, because I don't want to burn it before I have the opportunity. That like she has a positive association with me. So I want to back up a little bit and ask you about that. Where do you see there being a concerted effort to be known by the people that then you might want to ask? Or are you a fan of just going cold and playing the numbers game?
I'm a fan of going cold. So I asked a marketing company who markets everything through Kickstarter if they might be interested in me, not for this one, but for a later one. And they aren't yet. But so I went back and said, well, what would you be looking for? And they gave me another answer. And eventually what it came around to, they said, why don't you send us your next draft of your page in the video and we'll critique it for you. That's perfect. So there's no yes on their part yet. But what I did was open the door. So if you approach her and she says, this isn't exactly what I do, then you ask more questions. What is it? Unless you get a hard no, I don't want to ever see you again.
Yeah.
What is it that you do? What would appeal to you? And listen. And then if you can work toward it, that's great. So now I have a relationship with somebody who's kind of willing to mentor me. And as I grow to a big enough space where it seems like it would work for them, you know, we already have a relationship. And it's only because I got a no because, and so I saw room to say, well, what should it look like?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good advice. And I think inside of that is the truth that you can spend all the time in the world thinking that you're building a positive relationship. And until you make the request, you don't know if they're going to be one of those surprising people who suddenly ghost you, because you mentioned that you've had those.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, let's say you ask her and she says no and never call me again. And you stop wasting your time and you go look for somebody who does talk about the same topic but would like to talk to you. So, and give her a chance. She could also say, she could also give you I would love to, let's plan a date. You just don't know. So go and ask. You be polite, you be respectful, take a hard no as for what it is, say thank you very much. And but short of a hard no, I'm going to ask you another question just to see what would it take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's those are all such positive things. And I think for people who are listening and feeling a little bit put off by the idea of making these cold approaches or something, I'm just compelled to say again, I do think your comments about ego, Martha, really connect here, because you have to say nothing's wrong with me if they say no. I wonder how often we're making that choice, to not say anything because we're afraid that if they say no, it means we're not enough.
Well, also, they don't know you. Yeah. They don't know you at all. So how could it be you? Because they have no idea who you are. It's them. They've decided based on these things. It doesn't mean anybody's negative here. It just means based on these, they don't want to. Okay. But if it's a no, if it's just a flat no, you can say, could you give me a reason? Is there under any circumstances would you like to? And see what happens. And sometimes they say, I don't have time. I'm really not interested. Okay. Then you're done. Mm-hmm. Then you move on to looking for somebody who's on the same topic, but who is willing. By the way, you asked me and I said yes. I mean, I have no hesitation. Yeah. So you got to start asking people and being willing to take a no, ask more questions if you can, and take a yes and run with it.
Yeah.
By the way, again, only reason why Michael and I created Or Saren was because I went up and asked, and 90 some people walked out the door. And Michael and I do 7 figures a year. So, where are all those 90 authors now?
Right. That is absolutely the truth. And I'm glad you wrapped back around there, because that is a really powerful connection this whole time, is you just stayed around and realized what you gained by asking some extra questions, by making that connection.
Right.
That's
right. And getting his phone number.
So talk a little bit now about the audience that you've built. You talked about opening up your shop. Those are things I don't know because I haven't had a successful Kickstarter. I didn't cover that with Robin and Michael, and I'd love to know, what is the post Kickstarter world like for your mailing lists?
So I would start with, if you're brand new, nobody's ever heard of you, you might want to start with $100 or $200 or $250 in that range somewhere.
Awesome.
Because your goal is to be successful and have a successful first run. Yeah. And then if you've been around a little while and you kind of have you might go to 500, but I'd stay in that range. Mine's 500. And now I think it's over 10,000 at the moment. And then I'm sorry. And then what's the next part of the question?
Yeah, it's the post Kickstarter.
Oh, right.
Environment. How you talked about setting up a shop. That's actually foreign language to me. I have my shop, but it's not the same shop you're talking about, I don't think.
So then once the Kickstarter's over and the paperwork's been done and the things are going out, then my shop at my website will go live and you can go shop there. And that's going to be it for a little bit. And then I'm going to go wide with this book. And then somewhere in the end of the year, it will be in Kindle Unlimited for 6 weeks only.
Great.
And so that's the cycle. So Kickstarter, my place, wide, Kindle Unlimited, and then back to wide. And my shop will be open all the time. So and the cover on Kickstarter will only be available on Kickstarter or my store.
Oh wow. So okay. So you have a separate cover.
Yes.
Brilliant. I love that.
Different. Yeah.
You need separate ISBNs when you do something like that.
Yes, whenever you change some, yes. And the hardcovers will only be available at Kickstarter or from me. The paperback and the ebook will be what you can find wide. And my goal is to eventually get people more used to coming straight to me. So that's what I'm working on.
Absolutely.
But you can create an arc of your own of whatever. And if you're brand new to this, you might want to create a shorter arc. Maybe that's just too much, which is totally understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I would strongly suggest to somebody these days to learn how to go wide right away. And you can take the money you made on Kickstarter and recycle it. So if you made $2,000, use that to do ads to go wide. And whatever you make there, just keep recycling that money and don't pay yourself that. Just keep recycling it.
Yeah, that's absolutely an amazing way to grow, is to keep pumping your money into new ad sets to grow your influence, and trust that every email address you add to the hopper is another opportunity to increase your dollars down the road. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So who are you using for your shop then? Or is the shop through Kickstarter
Shopify.
or Shopify? So, okay, we both have Shopify stores then. So essentially you have a Shopify store. Great. I do. I love them. They're fairly cheap, and you can move a lot of units before you have to upgrade your plan or anything like that. And the integration just with any kind of tool that you want to use is great. So I love Shopify. Okay. So you're on the back end, you're doing very similarly to what I'm doing. I'm bringing people in by paying for Facebook ads. You're bringing people in by, and this is, thank you for, well, actually I jogged my own memory, kind of recapping where we've been. I wanted to ask you, what's a realistic dollar amount, or if that's too numbery for you, what's a realistic kind of spending budget for a Kickstarter? Because I think
you could do very little and go as high as 35,000, which people do, and if you may hit a point where that becomes a reasonable thing to do because you're trying to hit 200,000 as a Kickstarter. But when you start, really, you got to ask yourself a different question. It's what can I afford? It's not what do I need to spend? And so let's say you don't have much. So really that period that you set up for yourself is going to become vital. So what you're looking for is newsletter swaps, which are free. And you're looking maybe for the influencer who wants $20. And so the more time you can give yourself to build that momentum, the better. So, and by the way, pin the newsletter swaps so they go throughout your Kickstarter period, not so they all are front end loaded. Okay. And look for the ways that you can do things that aren't going to cost you anything, but time will be the asset that you can use.
And so that's what you just said. You on the one hand, don't front load all of the newsletter swaps at the same time, but you need to ensure that you fully fund within 48 hours. You've communicated that is indeed true. So set your goal in such a way that you can get that many pledges. And then anything on top is just icing on the cake. And that's where you want to spread out the rest of your newsletter swaps.
Right. Okay. And anything on top will either pay for the next Kickstarter, like book 2, or Amazon ads or something. So you also have to decide, like, some people just stay in Kickstarter for a while. They don't venture, their arc is Kickstarter, and that's cool too.
Yes.
Because you can also, so let's say you stay in Kickstarter and now you have 4 books you've done and you've built up a nice little pile of money. You can do a rapid release on Amazon. And the reason why that's important is because Amazon's algorithms work in your favor for 30 days. So if you release book 1 and then book 2, 2 weeks later, the algorithms are going to keep pushing everything for you. You get ads, but Amazon's also on your side pushing it as well. And you've already written the books. You've already given them to people. You hopefully encourage them to come leave a review at your site because you can set it up so people can actually leave reviews on your site. And you can use those in the Amazon blurb underneath. You actually now can put. So understand that time is a valuable commodity, which you have if you give it to yourself, and you can get followers before the Kickstarter starts. Don't use money you don't have. Please don't do that. It's so much pressure on yourself.
Right. I agree with you. And I have said to authors before, and I'm not ashamed to say this, that if you are saving up a retirement account and you're an author who believes in yourself, at least consider if the money you're putting in a retirement account would be better spent advertising your books now, because they are permanent assets. Not enough writers think about their books as assets. And a 401k is at the mercy of Mr. Wall Street, whereas your book is at the mercy of you. And I guarantee you do better quality than the guy on Wall Street. So, funnel some of that out of your 401k into your book budget. You won't be disappointed. Nobody's ever been disappointed for betting on themselves, I don't think.
And there are groups like Fans of Urban Fantasy. There's lots of them that will let you post once a week. You can't do it every day, but generally it's once a week. And you're going to just consistently pick up a few here, a few there, and you're going to have a successful Kickstarter because you kept the amount you had to reach low, and you were consistent. And you're going to get enough people, and then you're going to take those and build for the next one, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I told you we would go an hour, so I'm going to wrap up pretty quickly here, but I do want to ask you.
Flew by.
I know it did. You came out the gates like moving. I was so excited, and this has been an amazing conversation. I want to ask you, are you using BookFunnel to fulfill your ebooks or audiobooks, or what is? I am. Okay, all right. And so let's talk just ever so briefly about the newsletter swap, because I think that there are too many authors who don't realize that's out there. I will admit, I just realized the power of it recently.
Super powerful.
Yeah, you just go and look, and you can request a swap with anybody. I could theoretically request a swap with you, and that would be insane because I don't have a mailing list. Most likely, you would deny, but that goes back to the asking and the comment and everything. So
that's right.
Talk to me just slightly about the etiquette, and then I will let you go.
Well, also, you probably have a bunch of writer friends that you kind of started with. You kind of feel like you're all in the same grade.
Yes.
Those are the people you want to start with too, because you're pulling for each other, and you're going to rise together. The ones who stick around, you're all going to rise together. So start with them, and then reach for a few big fish, and they can say no. If you're going to conventions, approach the bigger authors, say hello, be polite, try and make a good impression. Don't ask them to read your book. And then later, you can keep in touch. I'm more likely to say yes to somebody that I can see, because I do kind of keep a watch on people who I can see is really working it, that they're doing. I can tell they're putting in the work, that this matters to them, that they have the right attitude. I'm going to support that. And I will even go and find your Kickstarter and personally support it, because I can see how hard you're trying, and I can tell when you're reading about how to do it, because you're hitting all the marks. And I get impressed by that. And I've also seen Kickstarters where I think, what the hell happened? And I, and they'll learn from it. It's not like I haven't done a few what the hell happened, but go get it. Russell Nolte has a book. I think Patty Finn is writing a book on Kickstarter, and they have how to do the basics. And I used them when I was figuring out Kickstarter, because, you're starting from a base knowledge of zero. So go ask people, how do you do this? And my philosophy is you collect all the info, and then you take what you like and you leave the rest. And eventually you got to do your own thing. And again, you're going to be okay. Set the goal low. Let yourself have a success. There is no prize in Bookland for saying, hey, I set the goal at $2,000 and made it. Okay, good for you. No, it says it right up there in tiny print, what your goal was, but it's in tiny print. And really, they are not looking at that. They want to know what they can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in a sense, pledging and knowing that they're going to get it because you hit your goal already is more likely to get you more pledges.
Yes. And here's the other thing I do a lot of. I go and haunt everybody else's Kickstarter page looking for good ideas.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes. I mean, yes, if you're on Kickstarter, chances are I've seen your page.
Yes. One of my recent BookFunnel newsletter swaps, I told my people in my newsletter, because there are a lot of writers there, I said, even if you 100% are tired of being on so many lists, this is a person who has a massive list, and watch what they do. Get those newsletters, open them, read them, pay attention, because there's actually an education inside of the structure of a successful author's newsletter. So don't get fatigued.
Yes, I'll guarantee you it's short.
Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't have a lot in it. Also, another thing I did was, so paid promos are generally affordable. They're not as expensive. And right of Reads was doing a dragon promo and to give away books that had a dragon theme. And I said, and I just told the truth. Can I participate if I only give away 4 chapters? And they said yes. So, and my link was to where you could sign up to get a notice. So I ended up with 500 emails that were good ones for people I knew who liked urban fantasy about dragons, that I could then say, hey, the Kickstarter's open. And so,
that's brilliant. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Again, remind everybody of your Kickstarter. Of course, we'll have all of that linked in my show notes.
We're in the last week. It's very exciting.
Okay. All right, so tell everybody where they can find it, and then I'll get everything in the show notes for you.
Okay. So if you go to Kickstarter and you put in either Martha Carr, Carr, and by the way, when you're doing your Kickstarter is very particular about the search words. So if you misspell something, or if people know you as Michael and you put Mike, they're not going to find you. So it's, keep that in mind. It's Martha Carr, Carr, and the title of it is Amon. But it looks like Eamon. And it's a fun book. I mean, how often do tabletop gamers get to be the heroes?
Right. I love it. Yeah. I think that was part of the success of that Ready Player One book. He couldn't follow it up with anything great, but I think that there were people who were like, wait a sec, the nerd gamer actually gets to be the hero.
Yeah, that's right. So in Amon, tabletop game, it's Queen of the Flightless Dragons is the trilogy, and the heroes are and I had the artist. So the artist did a group shot for me that you'll see on the Kickstarter page. And at first he did the typical urban fantasy thing where everybody's buff, and I had to go back and say, no, these are gamers.
Yeah, exactly. We're not all ripped gamers here.
Yes. So he redid it for me. So you'll see it in there how it looks like human beings instead of like they could go in with a gun and a sword.
That's fantastic. I love it. I'm looking forward to jumping in and getting as many people and as many eyeballs as we can on this closing week. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the quick turnaround. And I'll be in touch.
Thank you for the quick turnaround.
Yeah, you bet. Glad to. So, all right. We'll talk soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to TRBM. The theme music was provided by the ever-talented Christopher Talon. And hey, if you liked what you heard, share this show with other readers, because what's the point of telling stories if nobody's listening?